I think on just a kind of a primal level, I think there's just something about having superpowered characters team up with other superpowered characters is just very appealing.
All right.
Each one of them are true individuals, and they all have their own sense of right and wrong. While they might not share exact same beliefs, they do share a common good and a common goal.
So they then have to adapt and change and become bigger and better heroes to unite and work together.
And that's great drama, and that's great storytelling. It is what has allowed the Justice League to continue for the last 50 years.
There's a great history to explore in the Justice League. The team and these characters live in all these different media, comic books, animation, video games, toys. Every generation meet these characters and a different take on the Justice League. And now we're seeing the next generation meeting the Justice League through this film.
If you want to follow the history of the Justice League, it actually starts not even with the Justice League, it starts with the Justice Society. The Justice Society featured a lot of the characters that existed in the 1940s and brought them all together in one big story. It was more a club and an organization than a superhero team, and it was more about sharing adventures than actually going on adventures together. Then you flash forward to the late 50s, early 60s when the Silver Age of comics is starting. They're reintroducing these new interpretations of our characters. So it only seemed to follow suit that the next interpretation of the Justice Society is a new group, and this was called the Justice League. It was a smash hit.
Brave and the Bold number 28, Justice League number 1. Been around since 1960. What is that? Carry the One, like a long time. They've been around a long, long time. They came together because there's a giant starfish called Starro. That was the big threat.
So you start to see Justice League now becoming an integral portion of the DC universe. So Justice League becomes the book where all characters seem to appear. So if there's one comic you're supposed to buy, that was the one. My personal favorites of those stories are the ones where they go out and try to convince new characters to join the team. The Atom joins later, Green Arrow joins later. They go out there and they search out characters like Zatanna. They offer the position to Metamorpho. He turns them down because he doesn't want to be a hero. And they keep on introducing new characters.
The thing that really did it for me was the run of stories that Len Wein wrote in the 70s, which were just really great adventures. What he would do, it wouldn't be an adventure would finish and then there'd be a new one. There would be a new one, but there was plot threads that ran through it, so it was very much like television today, where we have an individual episode, but there are massive plot threads that run through and play out, and mysteries that you have to think about and solve. So his Justice League for me was real inspiration.
And then they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is the most famous comic book storyline by George Perez and Mark Wolfman. Crisis came out in the mid-'80s.
All the DC heroes, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Hawkman, Green Lantern, Flash, etc., you can go on forever, were all created between 1938 and 1941. Almost 50 years later, the best characters have been continuing. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were published non-stop. Some of those characters are starting to get older. They don't feel as modern anymore. We needed something to make them special again. Also, DC was too confusing for new readers. He had a strange continuity. We had this multiverse of different planets filled with multiple versions of the superheroes. You didn't know who all the characters were. And my pitch was, let's start with getting rid of the multiverse. Let's bring it down to our basic characters. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, one of each. Let's think about what works and what doesn't work, and how can we make it work now for 1985?
When End of Crisis came out, they relaunched a lot of titles, Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash, but also Justice League with Giffen DeMatteis and Kevin Maguire. It was not the usual team you saw, and the tone of it was funny. There was a lot of humor to it. It was this weird mix of characters, and from the outside, it was like, oh wow, they're trying to do something new. It was wonderful, and people really liked it. They were kind of going against the trend of grim and gritty comics. It was a great take on the team, and it was cool to see these strange characters together that we'd never seen come together and form the Justice League. And so for years and years and years, the Justice League was never the Big Seven, as they called them.
Then you flash forward to Midsummer's Nightmare, which is really a standalone, independent story. And that's the first time you see the Seven interacting again. And lo and behold, the reaction from the fan base is very strong. Then ultimately that gets you to the big launch point, which is JLA, when Grant Morrison takes hold of the book and really takes all the primary characters, puts them together, creates villains and situations that really are worthy of bringing those 7 characters together.
When I came into it, I said, can we bring back the Big Seven Justice League? Can we focus on giant scale adventures that only they could deal with? The big idea I had was the Justice League was so close to the Greek pantheon of gods. Let's make a point of that. Let's actually assign them. You know, the Flash is Hermes, Superman is Zeus, Batman is Hades. And it really fits beautifully because the DC characters are such big archetypes. What I could then do was go back to the Iliad or the Odyssey or to Celtic or Norse myths. And there was just such a great wealth of stuff that could be adapted or science fictionized or recreated. So I think that was what I brought to it, a sense of grandeur, a sense of scope, and the fact that these characters could reach out to every single corner of the DC universe and explore it in a new way.
If you go back to the earliest stories of the Justice League, there wasn't a lot of conflict between the characters. It wasn't until later that modern creators came in and decided if we bring more conflict between these characters, even though they're heroes, it makes for a more interesting story. It makes for a more interesting team because it more resembles real life.
We tried to position them as professionals, even though they would sometimes disagree or fall out. It was all about let's get the job done. And I used to love the interplay of using all those powers together to defeat an enemy that seemed undefeatable. But if you combine those skills, and if you're smart enough to get the recipe right, then the Justice League can pretty much solve any problem. And you do this, and you do that, and you do this, and we'll save the world.
That's probably my favorite run of all time. It was really a special time for Justice League.
The New 52 was a big publishing initiative we launched in 2011, where we basically looked at the entire DC universe and said, if we could start over, how do we do it? And so one of the first things that we could do was redefine the Justice League, what brought these characters together, and really show readers the first glimpses of the interactions of the world's greatest superheroes and do it in a realistic way where we showcase the differences between the personalities.
We went back to the team. It was Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, and that's the first time we brought in Cyborg. That's the core team that we started with and kind of went back to the basics. Over the years, there's been a lot of changes, but it always comes back, no matter how many changes happen in the comic books, it always comes back to these are the original characters. My love for DC Comics, and specifically superheroes, because I'm all things DC, comes from Super Friends, which was this Saturday morning animated series.
Back then, all we really had was animation, so the Super Friends was the closest thing we had to seeing the Justice League come to life, because you could see them move, and they talked, and they interacted. And they had a theme song, and that's what made me go outside and put a towel around my neck and run around like a dork.
It was done under really restrictive TV broadcast standards and practices. They were not allowed to show characters punching other characters. So any kind of action they had, it was more like Superman would fight a tornado rather than fight another villain. There was things like that which kind of kept it from its full potential. When we came along and did our Justice League show in the early 2000s, it gave you a chance to take something that was like a static image on a comic and bring it into cinematic kind of storytelling. After we had done 2 seasons of Justice League, Cartoon Network said, yeah, we would like you guys to do another season, but we want to rebrand the show somehow. I came up with this name, Justice League Unlimited. And I thought, what does that mean? And that basically means instead of having just 7 superpowered characters, now we've got 50 some odd superpowered characters. Basically, any character in the DC universe is now automatically a member of the Justice League. But it allowed us to kind of dig deeper into the DC bench so that we could use characters like The Question and Hawk and Dove and Captain Atom, characters who are interesting to us as comic book fans, and they weren't necessarily household names as the other characters, but it was something that allowed us to kind of just expand the scope of the show. And it turned out to be quite a big hit with the fans. I always say it was my favorite show of all the shows I've ever worked on, because every episode was different than every other episode. And then doing the Justice League as a series of feature-length movies, it's interesting. It kind of gives us a little more of a narrow focus in terms of, instead of having season-long story arcs, we're basically telling movie-length stories with still pretty large ensemble cast. So it's tricky from a storytelling standpoint to make sure that each character is there for a reason. It's really tough to accommodate 7 lead characters. We always do try to balance it out. You want to make sure they at least get one really good action sequence in the film. It's a juggling act. It's a challenge.
How many of you are there? Not enough.
It's challenging to have all these amazing superheroes together on the screen to tell this big epic story with action and spectacle, but also a lot of character. And I think Zach does an amazing job balancing all of that out.
Wait until the camera comes around, Ben.
It is super exciting to finally bring all these superheroes, the Justice League, to the screen for the first time.
This is amazing. This is crazy.
The day we were all up on the wall for the first time, it was like watching my 8-year-old dreams come true. It took me back to those days watching the cartoons. I almost shed a tear. I will say I held it together pretty good. It's groundbreaking.
Wow, it's like a cave. Like a bat cave. I swear I've been blacking out and entering comic frames.
Harry.
And living in the world of this invented universe and then coming to, like, where am I? It's very hard to describe the feeling when you look out and you see that Alex Ross painting and you see it in front of you and it's these real people. It's so amazing.
He's back.
I had this moment the other day on set where I looked up and I saw Jason and Gal and Ben and Ezra and Ray there, and I thought, this is a piece of history happening right now, and I'm lucky enough to be a part of it.
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't. Not.
It's interesting because pop culture has chewed up and spit out so many pop icons over the years. That's part of what pop culture does, is sort of consume characters and icons and ideas and start with them looking cool and interesting, and when it's done with them they seem retro, and then they seem just absurd and goofy and hopelessly dated. And a lot of these core DC characters still don't seem dated. They somehow still work in stories today, and I think that's just a mark of characters that are very well drawn, that they still have this kind of resonance.
The fun and beauty of comic books is that when it's a shared universe, you're really standing on the shoulders of these creative giants before you, and everyone acknowledges and understands that their ideas will be used and changed and evolved to kind of further this giant storyline that we're all creating.
My man.
As comic book storytellers, we've been telling stories with these characters for over 50 years. So there's so many stories out there, so many great touch points for people to tap into and pull the ideas out and mold and create it to what works best for whatever medium, what works best for television, what works best for the screen. So I'm going to be interested where they take them.
We should always have new versions. We should always make the books relevant to the current generation. Keep the characters up to date. Don't let them become your granddaddy superhero. You need characters who reflect the modern age.
Slowpoke.
Oh, it's on.
I've been really blessed to be part of the evolution of the DC universe. You have these characters and you get to play with their motivations, and as long as you honor the canon, there's still a lot left that you can do, and that's a lot of fun.
The thing I love about the DC characters, specifically the Trinity, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, is that their icons, the symbols, mean something. The Superman S, the Batman symbol, and the Wonder Woman shield, all of that is very iconic, and it means a lot to people. Just the other day, I was driving down the street, I saw 2 different people wearing Superman shirts, and I see more people wearing Wonder Woman shirts now because of the movie, and Batman shirts all the time. They're not just characters people love, they mean something. What they do represents something to people.
I'm a big fan of Batman. I started out with Detective Comics. Batman doesn't have any superpowers, so I find him relatable.
For Superman, it's not just about being this man of steel.
I'll take the ones on the right.
It's about him being that beacon of hope. It's about him inspiring others. It's about him giving people faith that tomorrow will be better.
Oh, that you can't pick amongst your children? Obviously, I have an affinity for Wonder Woman. She completes the Trinity, and that character is amazing.
You can say that Superman represents truth, justice, and the American way, but really he represents hope. And Wonder Woman represents love and compassion and truth. But you can boil it down to love. And then you look at Batman and he represents justice. So they all have these great elements of heroism that are embodied and defined so vividly in these different characters.
As
As a little kid, I looked at comics in a sort of very black and white way. I liked the idea of just superheroes and superpowers in the plain little kid fantasy way. The first time I looked at them in an allegorical way or in a more complicated way, in a way that they could tell more complicated stories that could reflect stories of our own, was when I looked at Batman. In particular, the Frank Miller treatment of Batman, that was something that I thought was really complicated and grown up.
Batman specifically is sort of the dark, brooding version of reluctant superhero. And in fact, not even a superhero, just a hero. He's just a guy who has worked very hard and through his own physical prowess and, more importantly, his cleverness and design of all the props and gags and gadgets that he invents and gets to use, has made himself into a character who is on par with the superheroes who do have extra human capabilities.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
I think that a lot of fans at some point in their reading career go, why is Batman part of this team? When you talk about taking on these intergalactic threats, they all have amazing powers, and Batman's like looking for a place to throw his grappling hook around so he can fly up to join in the party. Then you realize, oh, he's there because he's the most brilliant strategist in the group, and he's thought of every contingency.
I think Batman in particular has stayed really relevant and resonant because he is, on the one hand, like a superhero, and on the other hand, just like us. He feels vulnerable. He bleeds if you cut him. He is a real person on the inside, and yet he is super. And so there's all kinds of contradictions inherent in that make for really interesting storytelling.
You know you can't do this forever.
I can barely do it now. Steppenwolf, this is the job.
When he started his journey, he thought he figured everything out, which he didn't. And then obviously Superman died, and he felt such a huge guilt for it. And I think it haunted him in his dreams.
There's always a casualty of war. Superman makes an extremely noble act. So he's the inspiration to both Batman and Diana, and therefore he's our inspiration. The reason they go on this journey is to make sure the Earth that he was trying to protect stays that way.
I'm gonna take out that tower, knock down that shield dome. Don't wait for me, just do the job.
In this movie, you see Batman starts to work in a group, cares for people. It becomes softer and softer, and I think that he understands that he can't do this by himself.
It's fun to watch Bruce with this new attitude, work collaboratively, and someone that's been working alone and isolated from others in so many ways in his vigilantism have to be part of a team.
But it's good to see you playing well with others. Just like a bat. I dig it.
Maybe temporary.
I would say that he is the first person to be truly inspired by Superman, and he's continuing the legacy of Superman with bringing together the Justice League. He truly is the voice, he truly is the founder and team leader of the Justice League.
I don't recognize this world. I don't have to recognize it. I just have to save it.
It's been amazing to see Wonder Woman evolve. We got a little glimpse of her in BVS, and you could tell she was mysterious, but she was really strong-willed. And in the Wonder Woman movie, we find out how she kind of becomes Wonder Woman. So in this movie, we get to see more of who she is.
As much as Bruce wants to step up and take on this new role, he's a little clumsy at that. He's not been a team player. He's not been a leader. And for as much as Diana's also been on her own and been acting sort of in isolation for so long, there's a spirit about her that is much more collaborative and that becomes much more of a leader. And I think the two of them together bolster one another. They shore up one another and become a great partnership.
You're risking lives. Theirs and maybe countless more.
We don't have time for a control group. Is it a risk? Yes, but it's necessary.
Why? Because of your guilt?
Diana in the comics has great relationships with all of Justice League, but her relationship with Batman specifically goes a little deeper than the others. She is often the voice of reason when he's emotionally driven, doing something that maybe is not in the best interest of the team. love writing her. It makes her very tricky to write because you've got to put your mindset in somebody who is beyond thoughtful, beyond strategic, beyond smart, and the nuance of the character is unlike any other character because of where she comes from and what her mission is and what she believes in. She's just a character that is an inspiration.
For me, it was really important that she would be the glue of the team, that we would track the same character that we established in the Wonder Woman movie. One of the most beautiful qualities are the fact that she just cares for people in the most sincere way. So I made a point out of the importance of Diana being this glue to the team, that she would make each and every one of them, even if it's in small moments, feel stronger and loved and capable.
I know it's frightening, but if you go under, I promise we will pull you back out.
The Justice League is far bigger than Diana, but for me, I think that the most magical moments are the ones, even when the stakes are really high and there's so much tension and there's no time and the pace is going forward really quick, that she finds a moment to make them feel better, to make them feel capable.
Remember what you told me about Hart in the hangar? I bet you thought I wasn't listening. Thank you.
I think a lot of these guys, because of their special powers and maybe feeling partially either ashamed or trying to hide them, were kind of alone. It was a secret they were concealing. And now with the Justice League, they get to share their powers. So I think that there's something really comforting and bonding in that.
That's what makes these movies so appealing to me, because I can't relate to a superhero if it's only for its powers, because I'm not one. I don't know how it feels to have greatest power. And this is something that I really was aware of, and it was important for me that we bring something that is easy to relate to. She's vulnerable, and she's sincere, and she cares, and she's warm, and she's loving. These are qualities that all of us have.
On my lead.
So for me, these qualities are what makes Wonder Woman more interesting.
The death of Superman in comic books was the biggest thing that had ever happened. And people were really upset at the time. I remember I was upset at the time. I was like, wait, I love Superman. Everyone wore these black armbands with a Superman symbol on them. And everyone felt the weight of his death. You saw funerals for Superman and felt like the DC universe was missing something big. And I think people outside of comics crave Superman to come back too. They're like, you can't take Superman away. And ultimately when he did come back, it was a celebration.
It's a classic story, isn't it? The old death and rebirth of the king. He's the genesis. He's the first superhero. He's like the alpha and omega of our pantheon. So we need him. We need Superman.
I believe in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice.
In my opinion, this is the first time we see Superman in truth. We have seen the origin story of Superman. We have seen the downfall and doubt of Superman. And finally, with this rebirth, we see the true Superman. The Superman who is confident and sure and full of hope and joy.
Feels more grounded in the earth, actually. He feels more and more that he belongs to the planet, and the planet belongs to him. He feels a part of it.
That's one of the great things about these stories having continuity. The characters progress and continue to expand and fulfill their arcs as the movies progress. So to be able to bring him back and to be able to bring him back in the right way and for the right reasons, it's epic.
I'm back now, and I'm gonna make things right.
The thing about Henry is that he loves the character so much, and he's read so many comics and he's lived this character. His dog's named Cal. And just like us, he wants to bring that core, hopeful, larger-than-life, yet very human Superman to the screen.
We've all been working closely together to get to the core of who Superman is. He will inspire, be joyful, and give hope to anyone who's watching.
The thing is really interesting is you could say, any situation, what would Superman do? And you do the right thing. And I think to people who love these characters, it means much more. Wonder Woman isn't just a character people love, it's a character that people embody, a character people want to be, a character that people aspire to be. And I think that's what Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman do, is that they go beyond just being characters that are cool. They're characters that are important. That's why I think the Trinity is above and beyond anybody else, and it always will be.
The Justice League, a group of unique individuals with abilities that defy the limitations of our world. But even the most spectacular superheroes can be made stronger with the aid of technology. To create tech worthy of the Justice League, filmmakers looked at the evolution of each character to determine how science and mechanics could serve their individual needs. As the only member of the League without superhuman abilities, Bruce Wayne's transition to Batman is only possible through human innovation.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
And that includes his collection of customized vehicles. Case in point, the Flying Fox, a vertical takeoff troop carrier immense enough to house the Batmobile within.
This is the opening we just walked in through. The set starts in the cargo bay, goes all the way to the cockpit. We've built the entire interior of the craft. So you see the Batmobile here, and those are to scale. So imagine a section of the craft here, the Batmobile is sitting somewhere inside.
For its noteworthy design, production designer Patrick Tatopoulos combined the aesthetics of the Batmobile with various military aircraft, ranging from Boeing C-17s to the European Airbus. And drawing influences from World War II fighter jets, Patrick pushed the cockpit back from the long nose to create a formidable vessel worthy of the Caped Crusader.
This is not a sci-fi vehicle. It's actually very much based on bombers of today's in the last 20 years.
Can you tell?
Prototype troop carrier. There's an aspect of it that's very grounded. See the seating area here, the netting on the back. All those seats are designed to be lowered and they can sit.
Scaling 3 stories high, the Flying Fox contains an array of technology, weaponry, and surveillance equipment. Anything a vigilante hero could ever need.
I wanted to give him one new toy, which was real Batman, and came up with the idea of some drones. Just the idea that he would launch these drones out as little surveillance pieces or even armed to the teeth weapon pieces to go and do something.
The Flying Fox is Batman's answer for taking to the skies, but Bruce Wayne is also prepared for battles that stay a little more grounded.
Alfred, I need the Nightcrawler. Thought you'd never ask.
With 2 modes of transport, the Nightcrawler can shift from tank to all-terrain climber with the flick of a switch.
As we developed it and the language of Batman was in there, it sort of came together and became a vehicle that was believable. The whole top of the craft is built, but the actual legs and all the locomotion will be done in CG.
Have a small motion base underneath the Nightcrawler. Action! Whatever I do here moves the hydraulic cylinders to where they need to be.
Jesus. He is tall.
To incorporate reality and functionality to the motion of the vehicle, visual effects based the articulation of the arms on real-world robotics, and its heavy-duty look on forklifts and drilling machinery.
When it goes into crawling mode, on each side of the tread, it has these spikes. And so when it plants the foot against the wall, right on contact, the spikes on either side go into the wall. And then the tips of the spikes kind of expand out a little bit to anchor it. So it drives each foot into the wall as it climbs out. It leaves a gigantic mess.
Bruce Wayne needs tech to survive on the dangerous streets of Gotham, but he isn't the only member of the Justice League to embrace the advantages technology offers. As someone with an intimate interest in quantum mechanics, mechanical engineering, and electronics, Barry Allen is well equipped to design his own protective suit.
It's his DIY self-preservation suit. He's trying to make something that's aerodynamic and to reduce friction as much as possible, but then something that can hold up in the high intensity speed and heat and something that can also be grounding a lot of the currents that are coming through him, because he doesn't yet know how to handle all of the current moving through him, and it's got to go somewhere.
Barry's extremely intelligent and, as a young person, great with technologies. So we thought, well, what would Barry do? He's probably gone online, bought a 3D printer, researched incredible materials and things that can resist heat and energy. Who knows, he's so fast he might have stolen into NASA and grabbed some special materials that they're developing.
Adopting the idea of a prototype, costume designer Michael Wilkinson and his team employed their own innovation to craft the costume. From sculpting bits by hand, to using actual 3D printers, to developing custom fabrics.
There's a sense with the suit that there's like lots of layers of different ideas, some parts that have sort of been very damaged as he's working things out. There's over 100 pieces that are cast and adhered to the undersuit to create this costume. And then on top of that, you have this complex system of wires that crisscross across the body, and they're all put on by hand, art finished, and create this incredible sort of matrix across the surface of the costume.
Is this a bad time to bring up my blood sugar? Very hungry.
Technology may aid various members of the Justice League, but for Cyborg, it's a source of great conflict.
I don't know how you got these gifts.
Gift?
No one else can do what you do.
Unable to separate himself from the alien tech that keeps him alive, Cyborg is in constant contact with anything and everything electronic.
The technology that he uses in this film is apocalyptic tech, because the mother box is actually what created him, what gave him his cybernetics.
You were born of her.
It's nothing that this world has ever seen. So he can fly. It imbues him with super strength. He can interface with anything technological. He has worlds of information at his disposal, not just from our galaxy, from other galaxies and universes, which is pretty cool.
To create a hybrid of man and machine, filmmakers collaborated to create a superhero that felt otherworldly, but also echoed the look from the comics.
There's an apocalyptic core in the center that helps power the suit. You'll see the facial structure is more of the traditional Cyborg with a data stream eye in the center.
This is amazing.
The mother boxes are living machines. So the design for the cybernetic suit is almost twisted to sort of resemble the mother box. You'll see a lot of moving pieces, just constant, just in motion.
Most of our design considerations that went into it were about the surface properties, the kind of galvanized metal look to some of his armor plates, like you see on sort of industrial metal plates. And we wanted to use this, but introduce a kind of alien or exotic flavor to it. So we looked at images of crystallography and iridescence you see in bismuth ore, and add this to the surface qualities that we assigned to his body parts.
Booyah. Cyborg, Aquaman, The Flash. The recent additions to the Justice League may be new to the cinematic universe, but their history in the comics spans decades. Hey everybody, I'm Ray Fisher. Stepping into the shoes of these iconic superheroes was a challenging but incredibly exciting task for us all. But what was most thrilling was delving into the hearts of these characters. Their ideas, their psyches, their pasts, everything that shaped them up to the point we find them in the film. We had a blast injecting our personal spin on the roles as we came together and were officially inducted into the Justice League. Check this out. This is DC Comics Presents number 26, the very first introduction of the character Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. Now here he is talking to his father in Star Labs. You screwed up this experiment. You should have left me the way I was. At least I'd be dead by now instead of trapped inside this mechanical body. Ever since the beginning, Victor Stone struggled with what he had become. Once an all-star college athlete with a genius-level intellect, he was now a walking, talking science experiment. An outcast who constantly referred to himself as a freak and a monster. But whether he liked it or not, Cyborg represented a new type of superhero. The perfect hybrid of man and machine. He was a character ahead of his time. Back in 1980, when he first stepped onto the scene, the internet wasn't even invented yet. But as technology in our world evolved, so did Cyborg's powers. Among these powers are flight, super strength, unlimited access to data, and an ever-evolving arsenal. Cyborg's ability to interface with any and all technology makes him one of DC's most relevant superheroes in this digital age, and an essential member of the Justice League. Portraying someone whose humanity is wrestling with the alien technology inside of him was an exciting challenge for me, even if that meant I had to wear pajamas all day on set. Check out more on that and what it was like to bring this compelling character to life.
Can't believe it, man. To see all these guys in costume ready to go. Got half a ping pong ball taped to my eye, you know, but there are worse things that could happen to you. What I'm wearing, this is a performance capture suit. You know, we got the dots here to capture all the joints and mobility and motion that Cyborg's gonna be having. Chest light here, so you can see the core of Cyborg glowing. And we've got the ping pong ball with the LED lights on it, that the shadows fall in appropriate places when other people.
The biggest challenge for me would probably be acting as if I am in this heavier gear. I look around and I see Batman in the bat suit, I see Wonder Woman in her gear, everybody's looking really cool. And I look down at me and I'm just in the pajamas. And I'm thinking, you know what, we'll get it in post. But it actually gives me a little bit more to work with. But that's also a situation that Cyborg is going through in the context of the story. He can't take off his costume, he can't live that normal life that everybody else can just take off the cowl and hang up the boot and just go off and be their alter ego. He can't do that. So I feel like it's a little bit of fuel for the fire, if that makes any sense.
That character's got a really interesting journey because he has to come to grips with whether or not he would rather be dead. Because is he actually alive? Is the human part of him still existing? To have an actor who actually can make you care about them, it's just a testament to how good an actor Ray is.
Physically, the training has been rigorous. About 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, put on about 20 pounds of muscle, or what I hope is muscle. What I hope is muscle. It feels good to have that discipline because Victor Stone, before he became Cyborg, was a college athlete.
Back in 1980, when George Perez and I created Cyborg, he was sort of an outlier. Now he's the vanguard. He is what we are becoming because as our natural parts fade, they're being replaced by tech. They're being replaced by computers inside of us. Jeff Johns, and he was writing the Justice League, and put him in there and took him to the next step and moved more into the current time period. He understood that this is a character who lives in the internet in a way that he could see what's happening all around the world.
You stepping off there?
Sorry. It's Bazarnov in northern Russia.
Cyborg is always online. His epic backdrop is the digital landscape, and the digital landscape is so important to us today. It's such a part of our world. Our world would not function the same without it. And if you have mastery over that digital landscape, you have ultimate power. And what do you do with that power?
We're all cyborgs these days. You got a cell phone in your pocket, I've got a cell phone in my pocket. And you feel naked if you don't have it. We've come to a place where we're so dependent on technology, we feel alone. So Cyborg is the amalgamation of those ideas. He's essentially the gateway to where I believe we may or may not be headed in the future. With Cyborg, it'll be interesting to see just how his technology can either help or hurt the human race. The possibilities are endless.
Thanks, Alfred, but I'll take it from here.
Do I know you?
Most amazing of all the secrets of the sea is the story of Aquaman, who, like a water god of old, dwells in the dim, unknown depths of the ocean, leaping forth to do battle with the evils and injustices of the world we know. Now, that right there is from More Fun Comics number 73, the first ever appearance of Aquaman back in 1941, just 3 years after the debut of Superman. Now, as you see, Arthur Curry in the comics has a bit of a different look than our cinematic version. Over the course of 75 years, Aquaman has evolved from underrated and underestimated to one of the most beloved superheroes in the DC canon. And now, with Jason Momoa's badass version in Justice League, there's no doubt about it. Aquaman commands respect.
I'm Aquaman.
I was pretty excited. It's a bit of a dream come true. I've been a big surfer. I've never walked down a 60-foot pier with 12 water cannons going off. It's funny because like the water knocked me everywhere, which you don't actually see. Tried to hold it together, but it was amazing. I felt like a rock star.
Jason, he embodies everything that Zach wanted to tell with that character. Sort of this anti-establishment, rock and roll attitude.
It's very much the outsider and the lone wolf. When Zach picked me for the role, he told me he was someone who's not really accepted on land, not really accepted in the sea. It's something I can identify with, being Raised in Iowa, born in Hawaii, two very different cultures. You're kind of a fish out of water. You're a bit of an outcast and you're a little different. He's definitely flawed, and I enjoy playing the flawed characters.
He's kind of a big target when people are making fun of superheroes. And when I wrote the comic book in 2011, I wanted to tackle that head on because people question what Aquaman does. What's he bring to the party? On land, he's kind of a bit of a joke sometimes. In the water, he's the king. And I thought that contrast was very cool for a superhero.
Even though it's not in the movie, I spent a lot of time thinking about scenarios where he lived with his father and his dad. He guarded the lighthouse, and he was definitely a blue collar, but he was exceptional in certain ways. He obviously has the power, he can help people. It's his human side, you know. I think that's what makes him special, because he can tie the two worlds together. It's a big concern for me when we see Justice League, because people are gonna be like, oh, he's drinking, he's this, he's gruff, he's an asshole, he's this outcast, but I'm like, you don't know what he's been through. And that's what I want them to know, is like, what got this guy to go to the far reaches of the earth, to stay away from everyone, to be the way he is? What got him there?
You got no powers, no offense. This guy might be working for the enemy, we don't know. I don't want to die. I'm young.
He's a little rough around the edges, and then he becomes a good guy. He'll always help fight with the team, but then he's on his own. So he's the reluctant hero, and that's fun to play.
Ride ain't over yet. My man.
This is the startling tale of the Flash, a man who was so fast that he not only outraced his own shadow, but also broke through the sound barrier on foot. Hold on to your seats as you read Mystery of the Human Thunderbolt. Now that's from the 1956 introduction of The Flash from Showcase number 4. Along with the debut of Barry Allen's heroics, the Showcase series kickstarted the Silver Age of comics. And for decades, DC writers and artists have had tons of fun exploring everything this fascinating character has to offer. And not only is he the fastest man alive, his unique superpowers have launched storylines dealing with time travel, alternate dimensions, and even something called quantum tunneling. And this means the Flash can even walk through walls. Ezra Miller's depiction of the Flash remains true to who Barry Allen is. Good-natured, upbeat, with a brain that moves a mile a minute.
It's someone who can run into our ideas about physics, about how the world works. It's a character very much inspired by physics and by the works of Nikola Tesla. That's made the Flash such an interesting character for all of its history. He's a scientist who studies these ideas. He steps beyond our usual parameters of perception.
Barry Allen, for me, he always felt like he was us because he was a normal guy. He was trying to do his best and a little awkward, and he got hit by a bolt of lightning by accident, developed these powers, and is trying to do the best he can with them.
So for him, he's trying to use it for good. He has a really good heart. In a certain way, it's almost like he has humility, which is sort of rare on a superhero. Jeff Johns and I talked about this one issue of The Flash. He saves a group of people as a building is falling. But then they're all standing out on the street and they're like, we don't have anywhere to live. And he's like, 1 second. And he builds their home back, you know what I mean? Because he can study architecture really quick. That moment is so representative of the type of hero that he is. You know, this altruistic figure and someone who has an open heart. I've been interested in to inform the physicality of this person who's moving in a way that we don't understand. How does he get going? Or when he's slowing down his molecules, what does that mean for his breath? And then how does he stop? Maybe when he's coming to a stop, it's like a... And when he's in motion, when we kind of come into his perception, flash time, fascinating the idea that like your mind quickens, which means your perception slows to meet the speed at which you're going. The time that no one would ever see. Like, what does that look like? This massive current running through him. It's the funnest thing in the world. I'm talking about it like it's serious. And I'm a crazy person. And they say, yes, you can pretend to be a superhero. Wait, why am I? I'm blowing my cover right now. This is a terrible idea. That's rude.
Well, that's it. The League is united. Each of these 3 new characters plays an integral role on the team, and with over 180 combined years of comic issues and storylines, it's clear that there are infinite possibilities where Cyborg, Aquaman, The Flash, and the entire Justice League can go. I can't wait.
They called him Steppenwolf, the end of worlds. He lived only to conquer.
He's a fearful character. There's no doubt about it. I think as soon as you see him, you just know, oh, holy God, here comes trouble.
Steppenwolf comes from this world called Apocalypse. It's a world of oppression and fear and war. And it's a world that's toxic, really, to the soul and to the body. And it's led by Darkseid.
Darkseid is one of the primary villains of the DC universe. In the comics, Steppenwolf was an agent of Darkseid, and he was an uncle for Darkseid himself, so it was a family relationship, and also he was subordinate to Darkseid, which is a little weird to have your nephew ruling over you.
He's tried to betray Darkseid before in the comic books, and there's a lot of Shakespearean thematics to it all. It's about factions and families and betrayals and love and sacrifice.
I will take my place among the new gods.
There was always a certain level of elegance about the character and a presentation that I found to be intriguing about him. When they first introduced the New Gods characters in comics, they were all so much larger than life, and Steppenwolf was one of those characters really stepped out in a great way.
You have the blood of the old gods in you. The old gods died.
The New Gods are some of the greatest characters in the DC universe, created by Jack Kirby when he came to DC in the 70s.
He decided he's going to create his own world, and so he created the Fourth World and just completely added this whole other epic real estate onto the DC universe in a way that no one else has really done. So when he created the Fourth World, not only did he create New Genesis and Apocalypse, but he created mother boxes and boom tubes and Metron's chair, all these like crazy ideas, and no one knows where they came from. That was the magic of Jack's mind.
I know, Mother. You've waited too long for the Unity. I know, but you will feed.
A mother box, it's all about energy and power. It could be limitless, you know, it can communicate, it can sense life and death, and it can rearrange molecular energy, it can transport, which is great because it's a fantastic method of surprising people, isn't it? It's the best way. You go like, what was that? Steppenwolf's powers are mostly physical, more than any form of mental agility. He has been on this world way back in time. He basically refers to the people on it as primitive and unevolved.
You're not worthy to touch Mother. She's power, and power is the only law.
Even though you do have these superheroes with all these extraordinary powers, he still believes they're rather primitive. So that's why in the end you have 5 or 6 superheroes ganging up on him. It's not really a fair fight, let's be honest.
The island of Themyscira is a big island, and the Wonder Woman is shot on the other side of the island. So you have 2 visions. When you do another movie, you need to surprise the audience. You need to show more than you've seen on the other film.
100 years have passed between when we see the Amazonian warriors in the Wonder Woman film and now when our film comes out in the early 21st century. There's a lovely sort of cross between the world of Wonder Woman and the world of Justice League.
To find out that I got a part in Wonder Woman was over the moon, and then Justice League. Obviously it's amazing. It's kind of like a childhood dream.
It feels amazing. I mean, it's some of the same people, some of the same crew, some of the same cast, but again, it's a really nice vibe. And all the women that are picked are strong, powerful women, which is also cool. You know, they've not just been put in the outfits, and you know, we all did the training, we all got really strong, and you know, a lot of the people here are athletes and you know, and quite high up in their respective sports, so they are actually warriors, you know, which is pretty cool.
How do you not feel amazing in this costume?
I feel epic.
And then what a family we all become when we get together and train, and you really see the strength that women can have when they get together as a group, and how it gets put onto screen, and we're giving that message to all the women out there. I mean, it's been incredible.
It was nice for me to be able to hire 40 stunt girls instead of 40 stuntmen. It's very rare we ever get that opportunity. We inherited some rules from the Wonder Woman film. Things on the weaponry, their swords, that was quite interesting as well. Themyscira turned out to be one of my favourite scenes in the end.
You got your mallet.
This is my weapon of choice, a multi-use tool.
See you again! married to the toaster rig, okay, and do a rehearsal with them. And then we want to sort of see them come down as low as that they can get with it.
She's going to try and slide under it while you guys are holding it.
Okay.
Zach has been like painting this picture of what this would be or what he's wanted it to be for a while now.
3, 2, 1, action! Push it, push it, push it!
Keep it moving. Yeah, yeah.
I love animals so much, so really, I prefer doing something like this. These horses are trained for film, so that's obviously a tremendous help because they're a little bit more accustomed to these big films. You can hear as soon as they call action, their ears just perk up, and they want to go and do their exact movement before I even have to tell them.
It looks fantastic. This female army is galloping along. Really excited to see the finished result.
We are at the Old Bailey. We've got terrorists arriving in their white van.
Kind of disappear for a second past them. Yeah, fight more aggressive. Let's try it.
Nothing of this scale had gone there before, and we got incredible access into the Old Bailey.
All the public hangings and executions used to take place in this area. There's the famous Dead Man's Walk, where you would walk from your sentence straight through to be hung in a church, I believe, that was on site. And over the years, the site's evolved, but, you know, it's always been a site of justice in the UK for a very long time.
It was big, certainly what we were trying to achieve there, script-wise, story-wise. In terms of the number of people, we had 200 extras, we had 23 police, we had about 60 security there. It was great. It was an amazing experience and we were very lucky.
We're going to be able to use the street, the lobby, this floor. A lot of our action happens in a room, which is at the end of this corridor right here. This room will be built on set. It's actually built on set now. Why? Because we have tons of shooting, action, and of course we couldn't do this here. The real thing for me was like to make sure that this was the exact same green, the exact same wall panel, making sure that we transition with creating this thing on stage and you have the same exact vibe. And now in here we have tons of action.
It's like, it's really necessary when Wonder Woman comes in and you get that blast of air and the light goes off.
3, 2, 1. With this film, because it's so character-driven, there's a lot of emotion and character traits. For example, with Gal, she did probably 99% of the stuff.
This scene, it's been planned and rehearsed countless times, so everybody's been prepared. So a complicated scene that would take a long time to shoot normally is done really fast. And that just comes down to the preparation, because if we didn't have that preparation to go back and work with Zach, come up with the idea, go back, R&D it, choreograph it together. It goes to this constant iterations and versions before it's fine-tuned. Once it's fine-tuned, it becomes set in stone, like, hey, this is what we're doing. So that then gets distributed across all departments. Everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what to do. So all they have to do is execute.
She would add their own attitude, and it made all the difference, really.
The tunnel battle, you have Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, and Cyborg. We built a pretty large set. This is supposed to be the remnants of a transit system that would run between Metropolis and Gotham, but it's sort of abandoned. So we had 3 separate environments built over there in London. One for the lower tunnel set, one for the catwalk that they jump across, and one for the machine room where Steppenwolf's holding the scientists hostage.
He's already here.
Yeah, you overlap. You overlap your landing, and then you turn, you watch Batman land. Batman walks forward when he pushes Flash. We're close to about 50 feet off the ground, and it's tricky because one of our characters is on a wire because he fires his grapple gun and swings. So what you've got to do there is show that he's on a wire, which is what we always try not to do, because you never want people to believe they're on a wire, if that makes sense, when they're doing something. Then our other character has to leap as if she's doing it all by herself and nothing's helped her. So that was quite an interesting process for us.
For this angle, don't go quite so low. If you go too low,
I'm back here, probably can't see it.
Steppenwolf and Parademons were all played primarily by stunt performers in performance capture suits, so then we had to replace them with CG versions of those characters.
The anatomy of the characters that we designed didn't actually match real-life humans. So we had Steppenwolf, who was a 9-foot alien, and then these parademons with these giant arms, these massive hands. So we had to upscale everything in order to match these alien creatures.
We have families. Why does everyone keep telling me that?
Probably the biggest VFX moment in the tunnel battle is the Flash assisting Wonder Woman with her sword. The Flash takes off by jumping over a rail and starts running down the wall. He has a different sense of linear time than humans, and you immediately have a complication because the Flash moves at one speed of time, and because we're moving with him, then everything needs to be frozen. And we made a conceit in this movie because we thought it was more interesting that in the frozen time, we would keep things slightly moving as opposed to freezing at 100%. Trying to get the idea that because the Flash moves so fast, the impression of the Flash for a human, it's almost as if he teleports around.
You kind of got shot. Remember, it's like a circle, so you kind of came in like that. You would have come from like
Right,
this.
yeah. And I would have like started tumbling, right?
Yeah, you would have probably rolled into it. Action!
The neat thing sort of about Flash and his effects are, I mean, we absolutely are using state-of-the-art software and computers to do his effects, but largely the attitude and the style of them are sort of a throwback to more hand-drawn lightning and animation.
The electrical discharges on the Flash's body. It became a lot more satisfying if we were able to pick and choose what happened when by hand.
Computer procedural solutions are random. Lightning just, it goes off, and look at it, it looks random. So when we draw this stuff, it's all motivated by Ezra, his actions. He's moving and anticipating. So you find a story from his performance and then use that to take the lightning this way and that way.
So in that sense, it seems a lot like pure chaos with an underlying human touch to it.
It's fun to see all the other Justice League characters in their costumes. The work and the energy that went into the aesthetic of these costumes, it's really impressive.
Just like a bat. I dig it. You actually kind of geek out when you get to see everyone. They look unbelievable. Like it's truly like a little fanboy moment, or just you feel like a little kid and you go like, that's Batman.
Not that bad. Well, my head is not that big. The first 2 days that we were shooting in groups, I was bursting out loud, laughing all the time. One moment, I'm being super serious, and I have the sword and the shield, and everyone are dressed so beautifully, and everyone looks so strong, just like in the comic books. And then they cut, and I look to my sides, and I'm like, what are we doing? It's like costumes, it's like Halloween. It was really, really funny, but it was awesome. It's a great experience.
One of the most glorious times for me is the early time of research and development. There's lots of time to really do your homework, look into new fabrication technologies, new materials, new techniques, and just the design language that's constantly evolving to try and make these characters appealing and relevant to modern audiences. As well as researching the 75 years of the legacy of all these characters and how they've been drawn through all of the decades and what they've come to mean to people, what they stand for. The first people that usually come on board for the costume department are our illustrators. I begin with my simple sketches and my collages and things, and then they flesh them out into beautiful, stunning pieces of work that inspire all the different departments and actors and people around the studio. That collaboration really helps me get the look we need. The next people that come on board are people that source fabrics and help do prototyping and work out how we're going to make all of these costumes. There's people that maintain the costumes, people that build the costumes, and then the sculptors and the painters and the artisans and the mold makers that create the specialty costumes. There's printers, there's dyers, there's leather craftspeople. There's a whole army of people that go into making these costumes the way they do when they walk onto sets. So it takes a village, that's for sure. So this is my costume office in here. I've been working on some prototypes for the new superhero costumes. This is where we have meetings with the director and show him what we've been working on and the new ideas that we're developing for the superheroes. theme.
What is this outfit? It's weird.
Yeah.
Really odd.
Something I wanted to pitch to you guys. First up, we have the sculpture of the tactical suit for Batman, which is the suit that we'll see at the end of the film. It's built over the Batsuit from the last film. And this time he has another layer of armor when he realizes that he has to really lift his game to fight with the other superheroes and overcome the alien invasion. So this is the cowl from Batman vs. Superman, and this is the new cowl that we're developing. We're trying a new material that's super flexible, and we're having a slightly different silhouette, just tweaking all of the lines to make him look super sharp. Over here is our Aquaman corner. This is a scan of Jason, and in the computer we take the scan and we draw the costume over his body so we can get all the proportions right. We can play around with the shapes and make sure it all looks great. We did lots of tests here of colors, different goals. Zach really wanted the costume to feel ancient and broken down, so we're playing with that with our paintwork here.
Whether it's the trident, the eyes, the costume, when you put everything on right into the character, and that's the beautiful thing. That's when you're working with really talented artists. From props to obviously Michael, who has made all of our costumes, and they're amazing.
Yeah! Over here we have Flash's corner. With this costume, Zach wanted this great mixture between a very high-tech approach, but also low-tech, lots of beaten-up kind of textures. Sort of feels like a prototype suit. It's been scratched and messed around with. Flash is kind of working out his look in this early stage of his story.
Silica-based quartz sand fabric, heat-resistant?
Yeah, I do very competitive ice dancing.
I had this idea that it's almost like a sports shoe in the way that you combine soft, flexible materials and then layer it up, and so it becomes harder and harder. These fabrics actually started off being two different fabrics, and we took a neoprene, we came up with a digital pattern, and we had it laser cut into the neoprene, and then we had it fused onto this backing fabric here. And that way you have a fantastically stretchy fabric, but it also has an amazing dimensional depth to it when you stretch it across the foam.
I like the idea that he's stolen a bunch of stuff from NASA, and I think he's a good-hearted person, so I think he probably left in a little pile on the floor all of the money he's made working his 3 jobs. He just probably dumped a lot of it on the floor of the NASA warehouse and then scooted off. Oh, it's some surplus supplies, but he's sewn together these layers of netting and synthetic material that can be both flexible, that can be heat resistant, that can protect him maybe a little from all of the flying things, like all the bugs. You have to imagine the bug nightmare of if you've ever driven fast down a highway, then you know that the Flash has bug issues.
Yes! It was gross! Oh!
Cyborg was another character that it was my responsibility to come up with the look for him. I worked with my concept artists to create lots of different artwork to inspire what the final look for Cyborg might be. And it's ultimately going to be a character that's created digitally in the film, but in pre-production we sort of had to work out what his look was, how he works with the look of the rest of the team. And so with him, the main thing to convey was the language of his costume is alien, it's apocalyptic. And so we wanted to avoid any fixings or any details, any technologies that seemed human and sort of known to us. And so in the computer, we created lots of different sort of fractured textures, lots of sort of impossible junctures.
You want to turn it on so you see if it shines through it on? Well, okay. I don't forget how you make the heart symbol, but that's all right. This is my heart.
My costume is mine because it's pajamas. I have the CG mocap suit, and I've actually grown accustomed to it now. When I got to see everybody else in their costumes, I was jealous at first because I know I'd have to wait to see what mine looked like.
Amber light on!
What you see in the films is human face on the right-hand side, and the rest of the body is a sort of digital prosthetic that we've created and replaced. We've stayed as faithful as possible to Ray's performance throughout the movie, and he definitely guides it.
Victor, no! Victor!
This time around, we really wanted Superman to really jump off the screen and have an even more special luster and a luminous quality. The blue of the suit is a little bit more intense and saturated than last time around. And also, we developed this highly chromed and reflective undersuit. So when you get the fabric of the suit that is stretched over that, you get this wonderful depth and reflection, and it gives the suit a metallic feel.
There's no feeling like it. It's a special, special thing to put the Superman suit on, and I get excited about it still. Me and my friends, we talk about it, we geek out about Superman, and it's truly, truly unique.
What I wanted to achieve with Wonder Woman's costume is to get a mixture of strength but also elegance. She's a legitimate warrior and a fantastic, strong fighter, but the way she fights is very different from the other characters. She has a real discipline and a strength and a majesty to her way of fighting, and that extends to the whole Amazon culture. She's battle-scarred. She's obviously been in a lot of battles before. Her costume is very distressed. Her costume has changed a little bit, mostly in the coloring. It's a little bit more vibrant this time around. It has a little bit more glow to it. And also the biggest change is probably just the practicality of it all.
I need to be able to fight, move, sit, kick. We ended up having, I think, over 14 different costumes. One is softer, one is shinier, one is heavier, one is darker, one is lighter. So at the end of the day, I was as comfortable as could be in this type of costume.
Oh, that's the best part of it.
This film is definitely, hands down, the most epic, huge-scale film I've ever worked on. I have a great team of people that help me carry that off, putting ideas down on the table and make sure that all of the storytelling in the clothes is happening in a clear and powerful way. There's no limit to the amount of detail and love and care that we can put into these costumes, and which makes it such an exciting project for me. It's been completely a thrill.